welcome to another episode of I Demand a Homestead. My name is Amanda, and I've just got my little chicken friend visiting with me. I'll put her down. And today what we're going to be talking about is something that's kind of important if you're going to be growing your own vegetables and fruit, which is using a soil test, all right, a soil testing kit. So the one that I have here, I have ordered from Lee Valley, which is a reputable company, and that's kind of what you want to make sure that it's going to work the way you expect it to. Okay, so don't just kind of order it from anyone, just make sure that you're getting a good kit. You also want to know how old the kit is, right? So if I'm ordering it from wherever, I don't know how old this kit is, but this way, so what this kit is actually going to measure, it's going to measure the levels of, well, first of all, it's going to measure the pH in your soil, which is important because vegetables and fruit like certain pHs to grow best. So it's good for you to know what your pH of your soil is. It also is going to measure the three kind of most important nutrients that your soil needs as well. So the nutrients that it's going to measure are nitrogen, which is the kind of one that we think about when we think about plants that are growing well, that are bright, that are lovely green color. That's like really good nitrogen. Then it's also going to measure phosphorus, which is another important nutrient, as well as potassium or potash. All right, so it's going to measure all of those and give us an idea whether or not our soil has everything that our vegetables need to grow. So it's a good time to kind of do this right at the very beginning of the season when you're just going to start planting, so that way you know whether your soil needs anything before you get started. It's also a good thing to be doing if you're noticing that your plants are not doing as well as you might like, or if you're suspecting a nutrient deficiency. So, all right, so let's take a look at how we actually use this test. So we need to pick where we want to test our soil, okay? So what I want to do is I want to test right this row here. This is where I'm growing Brussels sprouts, and they're just kind of, their growth is kind of stalled out a little bit. So I want to check what's going on in the soil here. So this is another area that I'm going to test because I have noticed that my grapevines are having some kind of coloration changes to their leaves, which is called chlorosis, all right, which is kind of where they're a little bit more yellow than I like, and I'm suspecting that it's an iron deficiency. Now, iron deficiency, probably that's not because the soil is deficient in iron, but it might be because the pH of the soil is not quite right. So we're going to check the soil here. And this is going to be kind of my control location because this is my bean tunnel, and it is growing fabulously well. Now, beans are good at fixing nitrogen in the soil, so we might expect that the soil in these rows wouldn't be nitrogen deficient. So this is kind of my control test, if you will. Okay, so we'll start with our first soil test here near my grapevines. What we need about a cup of soil, and you're not supposed to touch it with your hands, so I'm just gonna use my little cup here. I'm gonna dig down a little bit, about a couple of inches. And then we're gonna grab 1 cup of soil. All right, so we are going to start with the pH test because that's the easiest one to do. Okay, so what this test says, it has a line here. It says fill with soil. So that's what we're gonna do first. Take the cap off and try to fill this with soil. Okay, so there we've pretty much got that to the fill with soil mark here. All right, then what we're gonna do is we have distilled water. And the test kit comes with this little tiny pipette. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna fill it up to this fill line here with water. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this little green capsule that it comes with. It has different colored capsules for each test. So the green one goes with this one. And we're gonna put the capsule, the contents of the capsule, into this kit, into this spot here. Okay, once we've done that, we put the cap back on. And then we're gonna give it a shake. And then we're gonna leave that for 1 minute just to allow the soil to settle and the reaction to occur, and then we'll be able to read the pH based on the colors here. All right, so now we've got our pH test. So what you can see is, depending on the color that's in there, will give you the pH, right? So we can kind of see here that this is definitely not in these kind of red, orange, yellow tones, okay? So, and it's kind of more like a bluey green that's coming through on this side. It's really hard, it's a bit hard to see, but it's actually closer to this kind of alkaline soil here, all right? So probably somewhere in the 7 to 7.5 pH range, which if we're thinking about actually what grapes need an acidic soil. So it's probably that the pH in that vineyard there is too high, right? So what we're actually going to do now is we're also going to do the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash tests for that soil as well, just to see where that is. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to do our nutrient test. So what we need is a ratio of 1 part of soil to 5 parts of water. And again, I've got distilled water here. So this is 2.5 cups of water and a 1/2 cup of soil. And then you're just going to mix that up. And then what you need to do is you need to wait until the particles settle out of this before you can actually do the nutrient test. Okay, so it's now been a few hours and my soil has pretty much settled in the water here. So now I'm ready to do my nitrogen, my phosphorus, and my potassium or potash tests, okay? So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to take this little pipette, and there is a fill line on here, and I'm just going to fill it up with water from the top of that dirt soil solution. So that's at the fill line now, and then what you do is each one of these different tests has a color-coded capsule that comes with it. So for this nitrogen one, it's the purple capsule. So then what we're going to do very carefully is put the purple capsule contents into this test. Okay, now that that is in there, I'm going to put the cap on, and then we shake it for at least a minute. And then we do the same thing for the other 2 tests. And then we leave it for 10 minutes to come back then and read the results. All right, so now it's been 10 minutes since we did our soil tests, and let's start with the nitrogen one. So this is on the soil with the grapes. And so what you want to do is you want to try and see the color of this water in comparison to the color of this water to the colors that are on this palette here. And you can see this is not very pink at all. So that means that my grapevines are nitrogen depleted. Okay, we're going to check the phosphorus levels. And that's a bit better, but it's still probably in the deficient range here. And then the last test, which is the potash test, you can see that's definitely a darker color, right? So we're probably somewhere in the sufficient range here, adequate to sufficient. I'd say actually probably sufficient, okay? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to record all that down in my gardening journal. So as I said, the soil test for my soil in my vineyard, it shows that the nitrogen is deficient, or depleted rather, so even worse than deficient. The phosphorus is also depleted, as well as, so I said the potash was actually sufficient, okay? So if your soil is deficient in potash or potassium, you have a few different options. One, you can put on compost, because compost will tend to have all the components that plants need. If you specifically really want to target the potash part, you can use wood ashes, which is what I often use. You have other options such as dried kelp, well, or even just potash fertilizers. Then if you're having problems with the other ones, if you're low in nitrogen, manure or compost are a good source of those. And then lastly, if you're more worried about phosphorus, again, manure, compost, as well as bone meal or fish meal. Those are really good sources of phosphorus. Oh yes, and for if you have a pH problem, like I do in my grapevine, the pH in the vegetable garden soil was actually quite good, so I'm happy with that. It was somewhere in around the 7 range, 6.5 to 7, which is pretty good. If your soil is a little bit too high in the pH or too alkaline, then you can add sulfur to your soil, and that will help bring the pH down into the more acidic ranges. If your soil is too acidic and you need to make it more alkaline, my choice probably would be adding wood ashes, because that's very alkaline. You want to make sure you put the right proportions of all these different kinds of amendments onto your soil. Okay, make sure you check the whatever your favorite gardening book is to know exactly how much you should be adding. Okay, but the important thing about starting with the pH is that way the plants, if the pH is right, the plants will be able to absorb all the nutrients that are there. Okay, so that's what we want to start with. And then after that, we're going to worry about the other things. Okay, so this gives me an idea of what I need to do for now, and also what I need to think about for next year. All right, so that's why having soil tests and doing them regularly is a great idea. Even when you think you know what's going on, you may not. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please feel free to press the subscribe button and the notification bell, and we'll see you again for another episode soon. All right, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.